So welcome so much to the first ever online Seaver Speaker Series. We're so glad you're here. This is a wild time, but it's a really special one. And with all the challenges that we face, we also have an incredible opportunity to connect, to plan, to talk. We have time like never before, and we would be remiss if we let this time pass without doing something special and without pouring in and seeing like what can God do with good people who want to connect and who want to choose to do the next right thing and to do the brave thing and to help each other plan. So if you don't know me, my name is Ryan Groves. I work for the Seaver College Career Center, and we're all about helping people answer that all-encompassing question of what do we do with the time that's been given to us? What do we do with life? What do we do with career and our vocation and that sacred opportunity that's been given to us? So this speaker series is in partnership with the Alumni Office. So what we are trying to have a conversation with our community where we come together and invite in great people, great minds, some of our own to share their story. And hopefully from that, we can all learn something or contribute something about what we do with these moments. So we're so glad you're here. And I am especially glad that we are joined by Seaver alum of 2014, Quinn Tabor. Quinn is a CEO of Immerse, a virtual reality language company. He is the son of missionaries, and just if sunshine was human form, it would be Quinn. So in these dark days, I can't think of like a better person to join us. So Quinn, say hello, introduce yourself.
Hey folks. Guys, it's such a treat being with you. I know that we're all spending a lot of time in Zoom, so I appreciate you logging in once more for what I understand to be an optional Zoom, so that really means a ton. How I was kind of prompted to think about this time is I'll jump in and share a little bit about me, my journey, and then you'll note that I'll try to interweave a couple themes that I've been thinking about and praying about coming into this time. And then I'll stop talking as fast as possible, and then we'll just turn it into a group conversation and hang out. But if you guys don't mind, I'm going to do a 5-second prayer over this time. I like doing this whenever I'm speaking to people. Helps calm my nerves, and then really invites kind of the Lord into this. So I'm going to do this really quick. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Lord, thank you that we get to be together virtually. Lord, I thank you that Pepperdine is such a special institution that it brings together entrepreneurs, people that are looking to really use their lives for purpose, on purpose. I pray that my story would illuminate kind of that desire, how Pepperdine's been a part of it, and then how you've guided me, and that it would be an inspiration to others. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, I'm just going to go for it. So I'll talk quick, maybe earmark your questions, and once again, I'll try to allocate the majority of the time just to hang out with you guys. But my name's Quinn Tabor. I'm calling from Newport, so I'm like an hour away. You guys are in LA still. My story started, though, pretty uniquely, and that was as a missionary kid in the Middle East. That one is normally a bit of a surprise. I remember when I was at NSO freshman year, like, okay, Quinn, where were you born? I was like, Europe. I lived in like places like Lebanon, Egypt, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. And you like still like to surf? I'm like, yeah. I promise. Like, I've figured out how to blend in decently well in California. But that early part of my story really weaves into my calling, what I've been trying to do post-graduation. So grew up overseas. Parents were at a company called Campus Crusade. I came back for junior high, high school, went to Pepperdine, studied econ and finance. And throughout, I was always trying to investigate what felt like my, dare I say, like calling, something that like really tugged at my heartstrings, but then also figuring out like, oh, well, and I gotta make money and like do things so that I can like keep the lights on and like pay for the next kids to go to Pepperdine. And that first piece, the calling side, was in particular focused on how can I serve the least of these in places like Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Saudi Arabia. At that time, when I really started on this journey. This was before like a lot of these places were in the news a ton. So if you guys remember, there was this refugee crisis in 2013. This is before that. So I was extra weird, but I was fired up about that part of the world. But then a lot of my skill sets were actually more on the business side. So I really liked finance and sales and marketing. So this is one of the first crazy things I did was when I was 15, I started a microfinance company. So a company that raised money and then invested in small businesses in places like Tunisia and Morocco. As a 16-year-old, I actually brought a team of 10 high schoolers to North Africa to do these like micro investment allocations into companies overseas. And then came to Pepperdine and tried to do that. There were so many amazing programs at Pepperdine, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna like overload it too much and add like the 101st club. So jumped into Pepperdine feet first, joined ATO, ended up being the chaplain of that, got really fired up about HRL, was an RA. One of my residents is on this call, which gets me so stoked. Really enjoyed studying abroad, but the whole time was navigating like, okay, I like am taking some internships in things like finance at some big banks. Should I go down that route? Like maybe that could be a way to make money and then like give that money to the things that I'm really excited about. Or should I do the thing that's really crazy and like go back to the Middle East? And it became this kind of duality of like, oh, I either have to do the like practical thing or kind of the harebrained thing. And that leads to my first comment on entrepreneurship is the best entrepreneurs always are focused on their purpose and their calling and their passion. I run a group of 100 CEOs as like a hobby that we meet every like once or twice a month. And it's amazing how quick I can perceive who started the company because they're like, this is lucrative. This is like really gonna make me a billionaire. And then the guys that are like, I couldn't sleep because I was so fired up about this idea and how I was gonna impact people and how I was gonna change the world. And like, I'll figure out the money piece, but like, I just had to do it. And it's like a sniff test. I can meet someone and ask them like what they're doing, and I can instantly put them in group A or group B. And fast forward like a year into knowing these folks, it's always the folks that are pursuing their passion that when the going gets rough, when a global pandemic hits, or just when sales are down, it's the folks that are really driven by their passion that actually survive. So that theme led me to the intersection junior year of college. Do I take the investment banking or do I go overseas? I went overseas. It was bold. I moved to a place called Lebanon. It's pretty close to Israel, so like on that side of the Mediterranean. And a lot of the advice I got was like, okay, you should join like a big nonprofit. You should go over with a team. You should like do a lot of the safety training. Instead, I moved into a refugee camp by myself, which was also pretty bold. But I lived in a refugee slum for 3 years with refugees from Syria and Iraq, while also working for what's called like a charitable foundation. So it's a group of wealthy individuals that want to give their money purposefully. And oh, Ryan, I see that little one. Sorry, that distracted me. So I worked for these charitable individuals and managed their donations. So I lived in a refugee camp and then managed the donations. I traveled to like 50 countries over that time, helping manage the donation side. And then when I was in the refugee camp, I'd do things like give out food distributions or do medical aid in the refugee camp. So with these Syrian refugees. Throughout that journey, I again and again was really inspired by how a lot of the missionaries that we were supporting and the folks that we were giving to, the most effective ones weren't necessarily just like planting churches or doing like traditional missionary things. They were actually English teachers, which totally caught me off guard. I had some friends that did like Fulbright stuff in China and things of that nature. But when you're really looking to have a deep impact, the English teachers were able to like get into really hard places like Saudi Arabia and Dubai. They're able to get paid so instead of having to raise support. And then lastly, it really built deep relationships with the actual people on the ground. So I was on this journey of kind of following my calling, but saw, ooh, now that I'm living in this like stream of following my passion, I think there's actually a business opportunity here after all. So that's kind of the trick for entrepreneurs is if you keep that filter on and you're constantly thinking and reflecting, I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's a business over there. You kind of like peek and you're like, nope, I don't think so. But if you keep following it, you like keep peeking and eventually it takes 3 or 4 tries. You're like, oh, bingo, that's a big opportunity. I think I can disrupt that or really like make a difference here. So I was thinking about the English teaching side. I was learning Arabic and realized that in places like the Middle East and Asia, $63 billion a year is spent on English teaching, which like Uber, when they claimed that they were like disrupting the taxi industry, they thought it was like a $50 billion industry. So we're talking like, this is significant market size. And a lot of the companies in this space they used to do just traditional English schools, but now a lot of them are doing Skype. So a teacher in the US can jump on Skype, get paid $30 an hour, and then spend time with a kid in China or a kid in Japan. So I saw like, ooh, opportunity, ministry opportunity all at once. I just gotta try. Like I gotta jump in and see what happens. So I moved back to the States. Thankfully, I knew some key investors. I raised some money. And we started off pretty naively. And we're like, well, let's just build another Skype company. Like, we'll see what happens. And realized quick that the Skype industry was saturated. It was pretty expensive to differentiate. So we went back to the drawing board and realized, okay, if we're really gonna be a game changer here, we have our passion, we have our market, now we have to figure out a product that will really stick out. And we landed on VR, which is a pretty wacky one. If you haven't tried VR, I had a couple experiences and I was like, oh, when I learned Arabic, I learned it through this immersive way where I would actually go to the location. I would be in a place like Lebanon. I would speak Arabic with a local, and I wouldn't do it in a classroom. I would do it at like the hookah bar or playing soccer. Like that's the essence of immersion. And then I would be reading a lot of the research on immersion. And in the like ivory tower academic circles, a lot of those professors are saying, if you want to learn a language, burn your textbook, throw away your flashcards. You have to speak with a local person in a local context doing real life activities. So for us, we're like, oh, VR, that's it. Like, bingo, we got to do that. So my CTO, who's way smarter than me, literally, I told him, I'm like, bro, you're single. Now's the time. Let's ride. Like, if we're gonna pull this off. So we stayed up late for like 6 months, figured out how to build in VR, built some like proprietary technology that nobody else had, and became the first company to connect teacher and student in a virtual environment. So picture this, you put on your headset and all of a sudden you feel like you aren't sitting on your couch in SoCal, you are teleported to like a virtual Paris or a virtual Shanghai, wherever you want to learn, just like studying abroad. And then up pops your teacher, who then will take you through these key tasks and activities, allowing you to like immerse in the language. It's a ton of fun. We've been at it for 2 years now. So our first year, we tried the Skype thing, and it was so hard to differentiate. So we ditched that. We were making almost $0, and then pivoted, and now have like one of the fastest growing VR companies, especially in Asia. So we now do deals with companies and schools and universities in places like Tokyo and Shanghai and Taiwan and even Dubai. An interesting side note, I was actually in Tokyo a month ago. which was hilarious considering the whole universe was shutting down very quickly. So I had brought our leadership team. There's 7 of us and my wife, we've been married for like 5 months at this point. And we get there and we had like been hearing about this thing called COVID. And then in Japan, turns out they're like way more on top of health stuff. So we get to the airport, everyone's like hazmat suit, like face masks. We're like, oh, this will be interesting. But in this like fortunate turn of events, we're able to restructure a lot of our deals. So instead of like sending a headset to a university, we like on the fly in this entrepreneurial way, we're like, oh, okay, everything's going to be different. It looks like this COVID thing might be pretty protracted. It might last 6-10 months. We have to on the fly figure out, almost take together a solution in that entrepreneurial way. So now we're working with these schools and universities to send headsets directly to students' homes, allowing them to have these types of group experiences, but in this heightened virtual context, they can keep learning. But it's been a roller coaster ride the last month. Every entrepreneur is good at pivoting. It's this term of like, all right, we thought we were going this way, and everything changed. So, like at the drop of a hat, we have to change 30% of our business to go this way. When the COVID thing started really hitting like mainstream media here in the US, we met with one of our top investors who's a brilliant guy. And he, once again, another guy that's way smarter than me. He has like 4 PhDs, one of them in something medicine. And he literally sat with me and he pulled out like a blank piece of paper and said, all right, Quinn, this is going to be a crazy year, 2020. So first thing, let's do a group exercise. What's your name? And I was like, this is weird. Quinn. And he's like, next up, who are you? What do you care about? And I like wrote a couple of things. He's like, and who's on your team? And I wrote them. He's like, great, that's all you have. So everything else that you thought you knew, thought that you were good at, kind of just scribble that out. And in COVID, be really entrepreneurial and like redefine in this context how to succeed, how to optimize the variables. That's what we're racing to do right now. Let's see if I have any other. Yeah, I'll touch on one other piece that is one that I really care about right now. Is we are a team that all really loves Jesus. That's like one of our kind of core common denominators. A number of us had worked in some capacity overseas. A lot of us had done something in ministry, but because of our faith, that was like what compelled us to go to places like Iraq and Syria. So for us, we don't just want to earn a profit. We want to really be thoughtful about how what we're doing is having like a long-term impact on the community. That's why education fires us up so much. But then in seasons like this, we're even asking the question, how can we use our skill sets and our giftings for the kingdom and the church? And like really, we're uniquely positioned that we have a virtual technology in times like this. So we're helping like pastors and key people in ministry in really hard parts of the globe to figure out, in light of COVID, like, hey, could we, this is crazy, but bear with me, could we do church in VR? Could we do Bible studies in VR? And that's another really fun piece for us, is because so much of our culture and our identity is built on our faith, being able to then leverage our skill sets and the technology that we have for good in that way has been extra rewarding. So like my 40-hour-a-week job is building this company in places like Asia, but then right now my like 15-hour-a-week job that isn't making any money is consulting pastors and missionaries on how to like respond in a time like this, which is something I never would have guessed could be an opportunity. But now that we're in this position and we have these resources, we're getting to really bless people in the process. Yeah, so Ryan, that's my intro. It's a crazy story arc. But now that you guys have a little context for me, I'd love to just jump in and hang out with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And so everybody, first of all, Quinn, thank you
Yeah.
for doing brave things and sharing your story. Second, everybody, this is meant to be a conversation. This is for our community, where we have one brave soul who's sharing this week, and we all get to now respond and participate in that. So how this is going to work is I have a few questions people have sent in beforehand, or people have been sending on the chat. If you want, you can go in the chat and send to everyone, or just send to Chad or myself, and we will be happy to help answer those. You can also raise your hand on the little, if you go in the participants box, you can raise your hand and we can call on you and you can hop on. You can ask Quinn yourself. But Quinn, there were two things I wanted to bring up that I heard you talk about that are so core. And even as we were talking to other students and people were sending us questions before this even began of what they want to ask you. So first, students, alumni, and I would say our younger alumni, but even our older alumni now are asking the question of like, all right, we see people get to a place, a certain career, certain job, creating a company, writing the book, whatever. But there is that mystery between how did you get from here to there? And for you, you talked a lot about calling, but you're also sort of diving headlong into stuff and exploring. So what did that look like for you? Was it research? Was it your gut? Was it the leading of the spirit? Like, how did you manifest this and make those decisions as they came?
Yeah, I love that question. Ooh. I think maybe my first statement that I've been reflecting on is to build something incredible, something that like really is earth-changing and like deeply impactful, is not quick. Even in startup land. Like I have a lot of that imposter syndrome and like comparison with other startup founders. And I'm like, oh, this guy John is like such a stud. I'm like, John, teach me everything, like take me under your wing. And he's like, Quinn, I've been doing this for like 24 years. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm barely older than 24. Like that's helpful to put in context. So I think even for where I'm at, I have a lot of humility that like we're a team of like 10 people. All of us are in our 20s. We have our sights on, now that we're in our lane, now that we have our calling, and we've figured out some type of market here that could be a business, not just a nonprofit. We're thinking really long term about this, which is super counter cultural in general, but especially for millennials. So when I bring people on, we hired a new engineer this last week, and I was explaining to him, I'm like, hey, this isn't required for you. You don't have to check this box, but know that like our calling to this isn't to just sell this company, move on to the next thing. Like I'm in my lane. I'm going to be doing this maybe for 50 years. And for that reason, in a weird kind of roundabout way, I think it answers the question that I spent a lot of time reflecting on and praying through, like, who are the people I really care about? Is there like a sector or a demographic of people that just like tug on your heartstrings? I feel like Pepperdine, more than any other university I've talked to or I've visited, like it has the highest density of people that like really care. Like they aren't just trying to get the job and like move on. They're like, no, this thing just riles me up. So once you like hone in on that, it's amazing how many different ways you can build an institution, a business around supplying a service or a product to those people. And then know that it just takes a really, really long time. Like we've pivoted, it feels like every 2 months. And then the pandemic hit. I'm like, all right, we're pivoting again. But because we have this really long-term conviction to these people and this purpose, you just kind of like get good at putting one foot in front of the other. The one other piece that I'll speak to, there's like, I gave a talk at a different university like 3 months ago now, and I summarized it in like 3 key points that I'll share with you guys really concisely right now. The first was that I'm like amazed how much entrepreneurs, who they are, not like what they write down as their core values, but who they are, disseminates down into the organization so deeply that like someone like Steve Jobs, not who he was on stage, but like who he was as a person, his identity, his character traits, that he's been deceased for like a decade now, I think. That identity has like distilled down and remains with a company that I would guess, I don't know, 500,000 employees. It's probably something crazy. In the same way that like key churches, like the identity of the founder is so crucial for setting the course and the culture. So when I talk to young people, I'm like, this is a crazy call to action if you want to be an entrepreneur, but focus on being extraordinary just in who you are, what you're reading, how you spend your time, who you surround yourself with, because who you are will become a reflection of the company. The second thing that I like really honed in on, that I like have spent most of the time today talking to, is just, man, don't waste your time on anything you're not passionate on. I can say that 100 different ways, and it's kind of cliche, but I'm like, dear heavens, entrepreneurship is the hardest thing ever. It's a grind. So if you aren't at your core passionate about it, it's just not going to work. Like most entrepreneurs are poor. If you're in it for the money, yikes, run away. But then the third one is also, there's no way to actually get an education that applies to entrepreneurship. Like the number of amazing top-notch entrepreneurial degrees that I've like looked at and recruited people from and done interviews with, it almost is like sets a false expectation in your mind. You're like, yeah, now I'm trying to be an entrepreneur. No, the only way is to like start multiple companies. And the only like prerequisite skill sets that you can have are to be a serial like learner and like get good at getting knocked down and jumping back up. So those are the 3 things that I like put on my calling card: is be extraordinary, be wildly passionate, and get ready to learn a lot.
I mean, absolutely. And that's the bridge. It's, you know, the education prepared you. And like, I know that you spend time watching, you know, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, figuring stuff out, and you're reading constantly. Like, so I know that you are a student of life, just like when you were at Pepperdine. But yeah, there's that bridge between there becomes a moment of synthesis where our classroom learning has to meet our practice in life. And there's no replacement for that. Like, you have to get out and do. Like Pepperdine, our mission is about getting you to go out and do. So we have people on this call who have entrepreneurs. We have people who like, man, I'm a fine arts major, or I'm this, and I like the idea of being creative. But like, you know, gosh, I might not ever start a company, but still that this idea of creating and shaping my own life, this idea of being the CEO of their own lives is attractive. So for those people who don't have a company, I love that exercise that you were challenged with, where you wrote down, you know, your name, who you were, and then who's in your corner. I think right now that is more valuable than ever, and certainly in career. So for those of us who don't have a company, what would you say to us in terms of identifying who we are and who our team is?
Ooh, I like that a lot. Yeah. My junior year at Pepperdine, I don't know if you guys resonate with this or not, but I had like a quarter life crisis of like, decision time. Where am I going? Who do I want to be? And I thought about it from so many different angles of like, okay, what am I good at? What are like, I remember hearing the thing of like, what do you read in your free time? Is that like a signal for what you're passionate about? So I circled around that topic so much. And I think some tools that were useful for me were just jumping on a call and talking to people that know you really well and asking them. It's kind of an interesting way to think about it, but I remember I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, what do you know about me? And like, what do you know that I care about? And he had some brilliant insights. I talked to my roommate. We were in a bunk bed, so it was pretty easy. And it was like 3 nights in a row. I'm like, dude, where should I be going? Like, what do I care about? And it started to take shape into some key things of like, Quinn, the Middle East, no one's ever made money that's like gone to the Middle East. It's just like a really hard place, but like you need to go. Like that's your thing. I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a doozy. But okay. And then like these first signals that like being entrepreneurial, trying things, and like not being afraid to get knocked down and jump back up, like those are kind of core to who I am. So I would definitely advise each of you guys to be reflective, but also just start jumping on the call and asking folks that know you well in this season. Maybe the only other piece that I spend a crazy amount of time doing, it was 11 p.m. last night, and I was reading like another biography of an entrepreneur. Like that's just my free time hobby.
Which one? Who?
So you aren't going to know him. He's my favorite Swede who started an education company in the 60s named Bertil Holt. Love the guy. He has an awesome sailboat.
I was wondering where he went all this time.
I know. I'm in Sweden, man. So that's probably the only other hack that I would suggest is like listen to their story arc and how their journey as an entrepreneur, or if it doesn't have to be entrepreneurial, and just see if you can like not get excited about their like mountaintop moments, because it's like, oh, of course, Bertil's a billionaire. He has a cool boat, and like he gets to speak at Harvard, and like Bill Clinton comes to his house parties. Like those are the high hilltop moments that like anyone probably is excited about. But like, no. What did it look like when he was 27 and starting the company? Do I like the idea of doing what he did, which was like move to Japan for 2 years and like sell English solutions? Do I like the idea of building a really international company with an international workforce and like personalize that and see if that person's day-to-day excites you? I always love the comment of like, oh, I want to write a book. Why? If it's so that you can say you wrote a book, yikes. If it's because you absolutely love writing and you're down to like sit at the laptop and just type 5 to 8 hours a day, that's probably a better signal. You should spend your time that way. So study folks and look at their day-to-day and be like, that's what I want. I think that really helps me cast vision for like who my role models are.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So, one of the things that I think we're all wondering about right now, and for you as an entrepreneur running a company, but then also for anyone in any sort of career, whether they're choosing it, whether they're in it, but maybe this could extrapolate out. So you're running a VR company as a finance and economics major, which I love.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. And now but that's the whole idea behind why we got this education, why we have this type of community, is so you can get there. So how should we, in looking at our own lives, how do we have that balance between profit, between our tools, between our passion? How do we put those together and make them all work? So how do you guys do it in Immerse? Because you're helping these underserved populations, and you have this angle where you help people, but what's the interplay between that and the technology you build and the profitability that you have?
Yeah, man, there's a ton there. Let me think. Yeah, I think Uh, a key piece to our journey in navigating this is getting the right people on the boat early. Um, and I am so thankful for Pepperdine for like 100 different reasons, and feel so indebted to them. But the number one piece wasn't the like actual like homework learning. It was like the experiential learning, and then the people that I was doing that shoulder to shoulder with. So like, guess where my co-founders from? Pepperdine. Guess where like
Yeah.
my key staff are from? Pepperdine. I and I think that's a untold uh, like linchpin to startup success, because once again startups are like a war zone. Like it is, you're just getting
Yeah.
hit left and right, and it's really tough. And like, who do you want in the bunker with you when you're making these big decisions, when you're having a tough day? uh, and the fact that like within this call, I'm sure there's groups of friends that have like endeavored to do things together, whether it's like study for the test together, travel to Heidelberg together, or start something together. Those relationships are so pivotal, um, that I would really say like hone in on them, hone in on the people that think the same, not the same way as you, but like have the same uh, passions and desires, and just kind of start and play around with ideas, see if you can convince one of the kids that knows how to code to like throw an app together for you. um, but on this journey, like an interesting way to put it is, what's the number one reason that startups fail? It's always co-founder disagreement. Statistically, it's like that's 3x more than like the second reason. um, and then what do most founders attribute to their success? It's their founding team. I And for us, that's a pretty crazy hack, is that I had an amazing community on so many different levels. From my fraternity to my freshman house, the place I was an RA, to going abroad. And that then became kind of the undergirding system that when it became time to pivot and to go into VR, we had really smart guys who were really committed to the purpose, to one another. And we said like, all right, we either like close up shop and get day jobs, or like we double down and work really, really hard. And because we had this bond, we're like, boom, there's no question. We're getting after it. Let's try. When we were investigating, like, all right, do we like, is the purpose here to make a lot of money, or to like be helpful, or to give a lot of money? We all kind of quickly said like, no, let's build a really, really big business, and then almost like tithe off of the profit. We don't like use that word because some of our staff aren't Christians and it doesn't make a ton of sense, but we're just like, we're weirdly generous. um, and a lot of that, when you have the right people that think similarly and have the same desires, it both lowers the stress, makes decision making way easier, and makes the adventure so fun.
I love that. Thank you. And I think that might be at least for me, maybe the greatest takeaway, and I'd hope for all of us. That's kind of the goal. That's even the goal of this Seaver speaker series. Man, from the other side, I work in higher education. I've done startups, I've done consulting, and I think all of us, wherever we are, we find out pretty fast the company doesn't love you back, but people can. And we can choose to love each other. We can choose to do something with life. And that's not just a better way to do business. It's the best way to do business, and it's the best way to do life. But it takes a lot of work. One of the things I love about you as an entrepreneur, like you've hired multiple Pepperdine alum, and you work with them, but regardless of whether it's in a company or in a social setting, I think one of your superpowers, and I think a superpower of Pepperdine is, are we willing to put in the work to create the place where people belong?
Yeah.
Because that is the most powerful motivator of our future and our fates. It's not about creating a company. It's about creating a place. It's about creating a purpose. It's about sharing that. When I look at you, I see that superpower, and I see the result of it and how it influences thousands of people all around the world. And then when I look at other Pepperdine students and I see the same thing over and over again, and I say, man, if we all need to be able to have these conversations. So even in this moment, I'm looking at the list of who's on this call. Like we've got to fight to make those spaces, to make those resources where we're talking, we're in relationships, so that we can, when those opportunities come, like in your story, it's not just, oh, that's a good idea, I should do it. It's, hey, did you guys see that? Let's go.
Yeah. And even let me add it, and let me tie something together that just popped in my head. A cool one is like where you guys are at and where you're investigating calling and trying to think through like, all right, what's my purpose? I really do dare you to, like, when you jump in your bunk bed with your roommate and be like, yo, Adam, what do you think I'm most passionate about? Like when you're including people like this, it creates both like an accountability that they'll like poke you if you aren't getting after it. And they're like, yo, why'd you take the JP Morgan job? Like you should have gone to Syria. And then when I'm in Syria and I have this idea for a VR English teaching company, which is equally harebrained, they already get bought in because they're like, oh, that connects to your purpose. Like I've been a part of this journey with you this whole time. I know why you're doing this, how you're going to get there, like why this is such a core piece of passion. And even if my roommate in this metaphorical story that kind of came true, even if he maybe didn't want to go to Syria, he's been a part of this. So when I came back and said I'm starting a company, it's like, oh, duh, man. Like, I get it. I totally get it. And like, if that isn't, maybe he doesn't get super, super fired up on the whole mission. He understands enough to be like, this is world changing. I want to help. So almost being an evangelist for what your passions are, create like an organic synergy and traction that like people will be drawn to.
Yes. And I love the idea of, earlier in this call, I described you as a sunshine kind of bottled in a human form.
Thanks, Ryan.
And and we see that like even in scripture. I know not everybody on the call is Christian, but like no. So at a Christian university, we see that in scripture over and over again about how God is a light, or the light of the world. All this this language. And my brother is a lawyer, also a Pepperdine alum, and he always read that verse of like, thy word is a light to my feet and a lamp into my path. And he's like, God's not promising you how far ahead that light goes or what you're going to be able to see with it. He's just going to say you have a light. But one of the fascinating things about light is like we think about that in terms of like for us, like, oh, okay, we have this light and where do we go? But we figure like, man, if God's given you this light, other people are going to see you. And they might know where they're going, and they might be able to help you, help tell you where you're going because they can see you.
So good. So good.
Dude, so I thank you for letting us see you today.
Thanks, Ryan.
And because like your story, again, I love that. It started in places like Syria, and it wound up to you making one of the coolest startups in LA. And like, what a journey, but it required that next step, faithfulness. So, okay, I know we have hit and exceeded our time expectations. I want to be super respectful of everybody's time, but I also want to keep the conversation for those willing to go. So just for this moment, if everybody wants, we can all applaud. You can, woo! Quinn, thank you so much for sharing with us, for helping us out. So everybody, we're going to keep the speaker series going. We're going to have more people coming up in the coming weeks. I know, and we'll have them from all sorts of industries. We have Sylvia Franson from Universal. We have more people from entertainment, from tech, from business, from finance, from economics. But we're going to create this conversation for Pepperdine to help us know Here, hold on. So where do we go next? How do we decide that together? And that's what these calls are for. So guys, let's all dive in. Pepperdine, our motto, again, the freely receive, freely give. And one of my favorite quotes from Marshall, it's like thousands of years ago, but he used to say, whatever we give to our friends is beyond fortune's power. Nothing that you have given away will ever be lost. And I hope that this can be a space for all of us for that. So everybody, thank you so much for joining the call. Quinn, God bless you. If you want, please stay on the call. And if you want to raise your hand and you want to ask Quinn questions directly about life, about company, because on this day, he is the sage of all things. Welcome to stay.
Yeah, and I'll do a quick 2-second plug. I do this everywhere I go. We love recruiting people that get fired up about anything that I mentioned, starting companies, doing stuff overseas. So shamelessly, we've got internships in Southern California. We've got internships in Tokyo. It's one of like my favorite parts of my job is bringing in young people. So I think we've had like 6 or 7 Pepperdine interns in the last 3 summers. So hit me up. Ryan's got my contact info.
That's what I love to hear.
Thank you, Quinn. Oh yeah, shameless.
That's Quinn doing my job for me. So thank you. Awesome. Okay, so I know there's other questions. All right, so Andrew Wagner, who's in our entrepreneurship club here at Pepperdine, he even asked you, what is it like to start a VR company in LA? What's it like to start a tech company?
Yeah.
And be in that framework? And you're Newport, right?
Technically.
Is that LA? I'm from Kansas.
Whenever I'm overseas, I'm from LA, right? Like everyone, they're like Newport Beach, like we don't know. I'm like, okay, LA.
LA. Yeah.
So it depends on what you understand. I'm trying to decide how deep to get into this. Basically, VR is pretty interesting. That it actually was invented in Irvine. It was invented by a homeschooler that I like vaguely knew, who was then became the youngest billionaire of all time. So he started Oculus at SC and then built it in his garage in Tustin, sold it for $2.2 billion. In light of that, this area has a pretty, it's like hollowed ground for VR people around the world, which is so funny. So when we say we're from Irvine, they're like, oh, VR, yes, like, we know that from a guy named Palmer Luckey. As for the ecosystem,
his family, his dad's an alum of Pepperdine. I think his little sister is an undergrad at Seaver.
That's amazing. So, if you are, come join Immerse and then intermediate your brother.
She might be.
Amazing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So that's a cool one for VR. A really interesting element to startup land that I didn't anticipate the importance of was fundraising. So I grew up on the missionary kid side of things, where I'm like really well aware of like, all right, we go back to the US, we speak at churches, and that's how we pay the bills. I've known that system, and I always frankly thought about it a tiny bit begrudgingly. And then I realized that, and this is a funny way to put it, but like the more powerful you are, the higher percentage of your time you spend fundraising. All right, so follow with me for a second. What is the CEO of Uber or Airbnb doing? Fundraising from like top venture capitalists and raising like hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. You can even do the plug for like, what are most university presidents doing? What are most politicians doing? Like fundraising is a key element to leadership. And all that it is casting like inspiring vision over a topic and having people say, I'm in. And now let me like prove my inness via financially supporting this. It's a really important skill set. All that to say, my view of it has become a bit more optimistic. So I spend a lot of my time speaking at investor conferences. Tomorrow I'm speaking to a conference that's supposed to be 900 people in Dallas. It's now on Zoom. With the Southern California ecosystem, a really interesting dichotomy compared to SF is the ratio of founders with great ideas that move to SF compared to investors is actually pretty difficult up there. If I started Immerse in SF, I'd be like a serial number to most investors of like, all right, we had 200 other pitch decks today, so like get in line. In Orange County, the ratio of founder to investor is like inverted and way easier. So we've actually had a lot of success fundraising in like the Southern California ecosystem. So that's both a plug for like, as entrepreneurs, buckle up to fundraise, get good at it, and get excited about it because it is so crucial. And then if you really want to be thinking in like using some foresight, try to start companies that have a high density of wealth. As weird as that sounds.
No, well, no, I mean, it makes sense. We're living in a capitalist market, and capitalism in its best form is an expression of where does our society see value.
That's how I see. Yep.
That's in its best form. It's like,
Yeah.
it's us saying, how do we cooperate together? Be like, you're right, that is a great idea. Let me back it up. So yes, you're trying to find where is that shared value and how do we push forward on that. So that's not bad. And that is the tension, because we often hear in the news of the bad side, which, and I'll agree with you, is when we got into maximizing shareholder value. And for all of us, it's that same tension we feel like, do I take the job here? That's not really what I think I'm supposed to be doing, but it's this, it pays a lot of money and I don't really agree with it. And we feel that tension, all of us in our own lives.
Yeah.
So what you are saying is, try and find an idea and a passion and the people with a passion where you see a lot of people saying yes and agreeing, and then take that and do something with it. So SF wouldn't be as strong for you, you're saying, but LA, Newport, Orange County has been great.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot of Pepperdine alum down there.
Oh yeah, it's a blast.
Okay.
It's a ton of fun, guys. Another shameless plug. Come and intern in Newport. It's great. The surf's good. It's the only beach that's open right now.
Oh my
You've
gosh.
got a cool co-working space. Oh yeah.
I'll come.
And it's like, just wait. You'll graduate from Pepperdine. Everyone will move to Santa Monica for a year and a half. And then like there's this slow flight south, kind of like the birds.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll like stop in Orange County and not go all the way to San Diego. So
about 50%, little over 50% of our students tend to stay in Southern California post-graduation. Which is just remarkable. I mean, think about that in terms of career, in terms of if you're hiring.
Absolutely.
Like, where are you looking for people hiring? But like, we all have this community, like you said, we understand the language, we understand the framework. Like USC does a wonderful job of they hire each other because they all get it. They all have that certain culture and you get it. All the Ivy League schools. What's the difference between an Ivy and Pepperdine? In terms of education, there's actually a wonderful book called Brilliant Sheep, and they basically say there's not really a difference in what you're learning. It's just a difference in attitude about how you are learning and who you are learning with.
Yeah.
And that is something that we can choose to change our attitude. Like, wow, we're all in this together. Let's do life together, because that's the best way. And so I'm just saying, most of us are still here. At least for the first few years. And so like we've got to do something. So, okay, with COVID, because that's on everybody's mind. So with you right now, looking at the market, you're as an entrepreneur, but again, talking to everybody who people are scared about the future. They're scared about what this crisis means. What advice would you give us to process that? Like what steps should we be taking? What questions should we be asking?
Oof.
I'm going to put it all on your shoulders right now. Whole global crisis and career, but go for it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I'll hint it. So one of my other best friends just logged in, Jared Welker, who's somewhere in here. We had a group of like 8 of us that we all lived together senior year, and we all jumped on a call on Zoom Saturday, 4 days ago. And we talked about this a ton of like, a lot of us are in disproportionately influential roles in our companies, even though we're so young. And the question of like, do we plan on COVID lasting 3 months? And thus the strategy is just like batten down the hatches, let the storm pass, and then assume that life will just resume in its normalcy by like July. I personally think that's really unlikely. I won't throw like a very specific number because I'm not full profit, but I would guess that like schools might open in September, businesses might open by the end of the year in the way that they have, but the like enduring effect on economy will last well past 2020, especially in education. especially in like international travel, event, like anything that relies on event man. Like that's just going to be a long time.
Yeah. It's not. It won't be what it was.
Totally. Yeah. So like one of our bigger clients is one of the largest like student exchange companies that does like international studies. And right now their prognosis is that it's going to be 5 years before the numbers even get close to what they were in 2019 for like international study. Yeah.
So a great time for people to travel via virtual reality.
Exactly. Yeah. So my key takeaways are thus to like really focus on if this world is going to remain this way. I think now is the moment for entrepreneurs more than ever. I love all the like LinkedIn posts from people in my community of like, look at all the companies that came out of 2008 recession. I believe it though. That like this will be a catalyst moment for young people that have grown up in the digital era far more than even the like 28-year-old. And like let's build companies around this being the new normal. And like even on our end, because once again, so much of my time is focused on investors, if you can show that you are responding to COVID thoughtfully, and that you have a core product that still can like pivot and thus be applicable in this era, because the core economics prior to COVID, nothing about where the economy was going was towards recession. It's like the capital still wants to be invested. So if anything, like we're thinking about upping our Series A, which is really bold right now, meaning like for you guys, there's a chance that you could actually raise more money and like grow even faster if you're able to be strategic about positioning your company as a response to COVID.
Yeah. Well, and so Paul Caron, the dean of the School of Law here, of the Caruso School of Law, pardon me, here at Pepperdine, he was even posting recently, like, you know, what are the trends going on in legal policy, and like what are lawyers being paid to do? And right now, the fastest growing field that attorneys are doing per billable hour on is incorporation paperwork. So they're incorporating more companies right now than ever before. You know, here in Pepperdine, a year ago we had the fires, and they were tragic. They were disastrous on so many levels. But I remember a month later, the hills just exploded in flowers like I've never seen in my life. And so right now, what we're seeing, where people think like, oh well, yeah, this is an extinction moment potentially for small business and medium-sized business. But what we're really seeing, like for us, when we think about career, when we think about vocation or entrepreneurship, we are seeing like, wow, the key factor here is what are we going to decide to do with it? Because the small businesses that are going to struggle are the ones that either cannot or refuse to adapt. Whereas entrepreneurs are going to be the ones who are like, wow, this is tragic, this is hard, but we also see an opportunity for growth and to make something beautiful from something sad. And yeah, so that's what I'd want all of us to be able to do. Like, again, whether they work at Deloitte or even, I know I see several of our entrepreneurship students on here. We even have a group at Pepperdine who have been creating like basically like a Dumbledore's army. And they made this solution. It's awesome. Like, so like think about it, like, cause in the Harry Potter universe, Dolores Umbridge is the equivalent of COVID. She's this thing that comes in and just shuts it down. And she's like, you know, clubs are canceled, lettuce canceled, education's canceled, and you can't be within 8 inches of each other. And so these students created, students from all the different clubs and organizations, you know, et cetera, got together and they say, how do we take the power back? Just like in Harry Potter, that group of students in Dumbledore's army said, well, all right, we need to take the onus on ourselves to band together and do this. And so they even like made a doc to say, what are our challenges we're facing in education, for our community, for our careers? What are the benefits? As hard as it is, what are the benefits that this situation brings? And then finally, how do we use this opportunity to do something great? And how do we do that together? Let's take our challenges, let's take our benefits, and let's do something. Because I mean, the whole idea behind what made America, you know, what has made us great, what has made us more 4 times, as much as 4 times more innovative than any other society, is that, this is the land of opportunity. It's not that we didn't have challenge. It's that we saw in the challenge the chance to do something. And that's why it was the land of opportunity. So yeah, and like that's kind of our hope. And that's like, even with Pepperdine being founded by an entrepreneur from Kansas, what Kansas represent? I have to get in my farm boy thing here. Every conversation I try. But we have to learn to see, embracing, and we see this again in our Christian faith, embracing the hard with the silver lining, with the beautiful, and doing something from there. All right. So, okay. Are there any other questions from anybody? Any hands raised? Anything else? Final parting shots.
Guys, I got nowhere to be.
Do you want in on Series A? Do you know terms? Do you want
the term sheet?
Do you want to lead the round?
Jared, I'm looking at you.
No, yeah, we can do it. Okay.
Maybe
right.
Let me.
Oh wait, we just got one. Go ahead.
Oh heck yeah.
There's two questions. Do you have any experience building an app? Is one.
Thanks for that stat. Oh, was that a question to me?
Oh yeah. Do you? Oh yeah, it came privately to me. Do you have any experience building an app?
Sorry. So I toyed around with the necessity of how much do I need to understand programming. I basically took a month of one of the free online coding courses,
awesome.
And that's it. Never actually built anything, found the guy that could, and very quickly focused on fundraising.
So kind of like with business law or Greek 1, you learned enough to be dangerous.
Exactly. Enough
like learn to, I remember that my business classes at Pepperdine, when we took business law, the last question on the test was, how much business law do you probably need to know? And the answer was enough to know when to hire a lawyer.
Exactly. And to not go to jail. Precisely.
That's great. Okay. And then Michael, you had a question. Michael, do you want to ask it or do you want to type it? Okay. Oh, you just typed it.
Oh, sweet. Oh, okay.
Okay. You hop on. Yeah, ask it.
Oh, yeah. Cool. No, I was just going to ask kind of what you saw as the goal, the future or end goal of Immerse before COVID versus after COVID. If it's changed or if it's still remained the same. Because I know how you're talking about pivoting and how you're just going to kind of have to roll with the punches and do your best. But I was just curious if there was a distinct difference.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I think our long-term trajectory is still the same, and kind of our qualitative goals of being really thoughtful about how we bring our faith in and how we're equipping the church and how we're building a scalable business. I think the why still the same. The how, with every passing month of being an entrepreneur, I just learned to hold my hands progressively more and more open. So that's a lot of what we're doing right now is restructuring all of our deals, all of our contracts, and how we complete them for the next 6 months in a brand new way, which is a doozy. It's stressful. But I think something I'm thankful for is I got the pro tip from a really seasoned entrepreneur to not build the company culture around a really specific quantitative goal, but instead build a culture more around qualitative desires for who we are as people and where we're going. So one of our key sentences, it's pretty crazy, is our identity as a team is bigger than Immerse. So Immerse we just see as a vehicle to accomplishing these larger kind of missional outcomes in places like the Middle East and Asia. So we've had a couple early flirtations by acquirers that would buy Immerse, but our team, we would do that, kind of hand off the company for a year, but we're no, this is our trajectory, this is where we're going. No matter what, we're going to be in this sector, in this lane, in this geography for the next 50 years. So in a way, our goals and our identity is bigger than just this one company. An interesting one that I'm really passionate about right now is not just building a team that's trying, or like that's simply achieving like my vision, but really trying to find other entrepreneurs and bring them in to Immerse, learn from a lot of our mistakes and a lot of our kind of like geographic insights, and then help them plant companies long term and like tap into our investor network. So we're actually, we have been toying with this idea pre-COVID, and at first we were like, okay, we should stop. Now we're thinking actually we should definitely do this. Is like a 1 year, what we're considering calling it our missional entrepreneur program, where we bring in recent grads or young people and just be like, hey, work with us, learn how we do, and learn about our culture, and then like we just kind of want to equip and send you.
Wow.
Which is kind of counterintuitive for building a company, but it gets us really fired up on like the scalability of our impact. So that's like even something that we're like putting together that program right now that would start in September, and it could allow people to like work with us at our US headquarters and then our Japanese headquarters, really understand what it looks like to build a social, entrepreneurial, and like missional business. And then after a year, just be like, great, go. Like you do you. We just want to support you and help you launch.
Amazing. Jared, I see your hand up. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Quinn, for speaking. I had a question kind of about culture, and I love how you bring that up, because I think it is especially so important for, as you transition to and grow to a larger company, to keep that culture. And so my question for you is, are there any other strategies that you use to make sure that people have diversity but remain the same with those key values? And how do you do that with like some of your teachers as well? How do you make sure that infiltrates throughout the whole company?
Oh, good question. I like that a lot. Yeah. So folks often forget that we have like 10 people on our core team and then 50 teachers, right? Like we're an education company. So we have to, it's hard. That's like a really big piece to who we are. I think it starts with, interestingly, like where you recruit. So I could explain that in detail, but basically, like if you want to find the right people, look in the right places first before you even dig too much into trying to like train them or get them bought into your culture. So we've brought on staff from all of the major like California universities, and like Pepperdine students are by far the best fit. So we like double down whenever someone from Pepperdine applies. I know it's super real because they're like business minded, and they're like, I would say that Pepperdine's uniquely set apart for social entrepreneurship because of like the Pepperdine culture, and that's so in line with who we are. So looking in the right places. We recruit a lot of our teachers literally speaking at churches and just being like, hey, who loves Jesus? Great. Who's wildly friendly and like wants to stay up late talking to Chinese kids? And we have a ton apply, but because we're like looking in those types of places, we oftentimes have just a way higher hit rate for people that are a culture fit. As for the actual application process, we take our time. We do not rush the interviewing process. We have like every single guy on the team has to spend an hour with an applicant one-on-one before we bring them in. So everyone has to like give the collective stamp of approval. Sometimes I wish that we were more formal, but most of the time it's literally just like grab coffee and hang.
Well, and that's, again, Quinn, I think we're seeing that change from like top companies like Google Rework. If you're not familiar, anybody in this call, Google has this platform called Rework where they've spent more than 10 years doing research on how do they not just hire great people, but how do they hire and create super high functioning teams and leaders? Because it's a way better way to build a company. And that one of the things they do, and there's an excellent book with the research on this for those of you who are research minded by Dr. David Burkus called Under New Management, where I mean, it all supports what Quinn's saying. That's what I want to get to. Everything Quinn is saying is right, and it's backed by science. Basically what it gets down to is, again, you don't work for your boss, you work for your colleagues, for your community, for your team. And the team almost always does a better job of hiring that person, and they feel better about the person they hire and are more invested in their team and their own contributions when everybody's a part of that process to bring somebody on board with culture. Because, like, as Quinn, you've been married how many months now? 5, 6?
Yep.
Good job, buddy. But you might well realize, man, my goodness, 40 plus hours a week. And right now the average American works 53 hours plus. The average 20 years ago, the average work week was about 42 hours a week. Right now it's over 50, and it's on the upward trend of working more and more and always being tethered to work. So think about, Quinn, you have your spouse, and if you're not careful, even if you are, sometimes you spend more time with those people at work than you potentially do with your spouse or your kids. And so those relationships, they're not just colleagues, they're the other humans that we're spending this short time of life with on earth. So how do we, that's precious. And so I love that you guys do that. That's killer. You're ahead of Google.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack that one. I just got so excited by how
awesome. Dude, I think we're in total agreement.
Okay, and then Chad, in the chat, if everybody sees it, Chad actually has a registration link up for Sylvia Franson's Speaking Serious. She's awesome. She's another person who hires a ton of Pepperdine people. I think, and her son Christian's a student. I always say, if you guys want to register for the one on the 29th, go there. Good job, Chad. And then also work for Quinn. He's cool too. What else? Any other last questions? Parting remarks? Jared, do you want to poke fun at your friend? Anything else? Okay, cool. Oh, we have one more. All right. Okay. And this is from Andrew Wagner. Do you see companies taking advantage of this time to invest in employee training? And what are they doing right now to maximize on that? Is that even happening? And if it is, what does that look like now?
Yeah, really interesting.
And then this will probably be our last, because we're way past time.
Yeah.
But thank you. Yeah.
I think there's going to be a really interesting, just like work cultural shift in light of how many companies realize that working from home is wildly viable. And then that'll elicit a lot of questions on what work culture then looks like, how to build culture remotely. I would guess, I'm totally making these stats up, but if 15% of companies were full remote or majority remote pre-COVID, I would guess that the number will be 35 to 40.
Wow.
Once things normalize, I think it's going to be really, really significant. So I think a lot of intentionality will have to be required to build culture, to manage KPIs, but then also to develop staff when they aren't right next to you. I think a lot of things are actually kind of assumed that because we're in the same office, these things are happening. But once they're remote, I think the necessity for an intentionality, I think there's going to be brand new job titles at companies. I think there's going to be new job descriptions of people that are just trying to create cohesion amongst fully remote teams. And I think what in our field is actually, it's this whole industry. I had no idea it existed 2 years ago. It's called learning and development. So it's basically a part of HR, and it's people that are then training their staff in either technical skills or soft skills. So we're a soft skill L&D budget item. I think collaborative group education and like learning activities that are remote will become the status quo for building culture when just like Zoom meetings don't really suffice. So I think this whole like new landscape in 2 years is going to be like the Wild West for a while, but it's going to take a couple key leaders and a couple key companies to capitalize, and it'll become a new way of doing it shortly.
Well, we're in on the seed round of that new company when it starts.
Me too. I don't know if I'm going to start it, but I'm going to fully support it.
No. We don't want to do that. We want to. Yeah, that's the other beautiful part of capitalism. Great. So I will say this Zoom call has very much sufficed, and I'm very thankful for you. I think that's all the time we have. So Quinn Tabor, dude, thank you for being a friend.
Yeah,
to me, to all of us.
Good man.
You're a good man, the brother. Everybody else,
thanks
Lord
for joining, guys.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, Lord, make his face shine upon you. Okay, that's about it. That's all we got. Any other last remarks?
No, thank you all so much.
Internship.
Quinn, you're amazing. Ryan, thank you so much. Again, friends, the link for our next Seaver speaker series is up there, and I'm going to also send it out in a confirmation email to all of you after this. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate you.
Yeah,
cool.
Thanks, guys. It's been a treat.
All right, see everybody.
All right, take care.
In the future.
Blessings.
Bye.